السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يا رب تكونوا بخير وأشوفكم دايما بخير يا رب. إن شاء الله دلوقتي هنبتدي كورس جديد لبلندر. ده هيعلمكم إن شاء الله الأنيميشن. تمام، إزاي تعملوا أنيميشن للعربية في بلندر. لو احتجتوا أي مساعدة أو احتجتوا أي حاجة يا ريت ما تترددوش وتكلموني على الشات أو تبعتولي رسالة، وإن شاء الله أنا هساعدكم جدا جدا. يلا نبتدي الكورس بإذن الله. يلا بينا عشان نتوكل على الله. بسم الله.
Hello and welcome to the new tutorial. In this tutorial we will create scenes from the introduction in the free program Blender step by step. The entire process of creating scenes is recorded, so the tutorial is easy to follow even for beginners. The tutorial is separated into 15 parts with an average duration of 10 minutes to make it easier to follow. If you are a Blender beginner, in the first 10 minutes I will introduce you to the basic of the Blender. After that we will download the car and improve the materials and animate it. We will talk about camera settings and camera animation. We will create lighting using volumetric and increase the illusion of the speed with the help of emission particles and dolly zoom effect. We will also talk about modeling, post-processing, video editing, sound effects and more. All resources and links are included in the tutorial. Let's now add lights to car. So I will go to frame 0 and I will select this car and I will go with numpad/key to isolate only this car, so we can work only with car and lights. And I will now set cursor here and I will go with Shift A and I will go with light and I will go with spotlight. And now I will go with RX90 to rotate this on 90 degrees. Now I will go to light properties tab and I will set this maybe to orange light and I will set this maybe to 500. And we can also play with spot size and this radius here, but I will just move this little on y-axis and I will go with Alt D and I will make double lights here, so we can go with Alt D and X to move this on x-axis, and we can now go with Alt D again, X, and place one here and Alt D X and one here. Now we can parent this to our car, so we can, because if we move this to timeline we can see that this is not parent, and you can select one lamp and hold Shift and select all 4 lamps, or you can select first one and go to select linked object data, because we use Alt D, and now we can hold Shift and select our car and we can go with Control P and set parent to object. And now we can see that these lights go with car. And now we can go with numpad/key to back to our scene. And I make test renders with lights so you can see how this look. Next thing we need here is trees. So in this example here you can see a lot of trees. And for this I use this botanic add-on, so polygonic and botanic add-on. But because this is not free add-on, I think one of these assets here, first one, is free. So you can go to Blender Market and you can search for botanic, and you can click here on this polygonic botanic, and you can, I think, download this for free, and you will get few trees for free, and you can use this one is in this scene. So you can just click here and OK, and then you can just place this over scene. So just S to scale, bring this down, and with Alt D we can make instance of this object. So Alt D Y to move this on Y axis, and Alt D X to move this here. But last time, because I have this paid add-on, I use two versions of these trees. I think I use also this one, and I will press S to scale and just play with this. So you can rotate this on Z axis, so RZ, and Alt D Y, and just be sure to not use Shift D, just use Alt D. But if you don't want to use this botanic add-on, you can of course go to CG Trader and you can search here for trees, and you can click here to free, and you can find a lot of high quality and free models. So you can download any of these models and you can place it in your scene. But in last tutorial I suggest also this one, this website, so 3dshaker.com. So you can go to library and free, and then you can download this nice tree here. So you can click here and you can also buy this and download this free tree. And I will search this on my computer, so we can open this. I will find this file, so this is what you get. I will go to layout here, and if you select this tree and if you go to edit mode, you can see a lot of mesh here. And because we will duplicate this tree a lot of time, we don't want high resolution mesh here, because this will slow down your render time drastically. And we can go to edit mode and we can go to mesh, cleanup, decimate geometry, and I will decimate this 10 times. So I will go with here with 0.1. And you can see from afar we still get high quality tree, but this will now make our scene much faster. And now I will go with copy object, and I will now back to my Blender file, and we can also use this tree. So I will press paste here, and you can see that this tree is very small, so I will press S and I will scale this, and we can also use this tree here. So you can go with Alt D and move this on Y axis, and we can scale this, rotate and place over scene. After about 10 minutes of playing with these trees and duplicate, so you can also duplicate, select more trees, and you can go with Alt D and you can move this, for example, on Y axis. So you don't need duplicate this one by one, and I create this scene, and I put less trees here at the end, so I get this effect. Let's now create this street lamp. So believe or not, this is a street lamp here, and if I move to this frame, you can see that there is street lamp. And because this is barely visible, we don't need put too much effort to create this, but we can start now with cylinder. So I will go with Shift A, cylinder, and I will bring this to 16 vertices here, and I will now press numpad/key so we can work only with this street lamp. And I will now go to this transform tab, and I will type here 4 meters on z axis. Now first I will scale this maybe to 0.3 on x and y, and now I will type here 4 meters on z axis. And we can now make basic shape, so I will go with numpad 1 and to X-ray mode, so we can go to edit mode, and with this edge select we can select this part here and press S. So this is my reference I download on internet, so I want to create something similar like this. So we can go with Ctrl R to add one loop cut here, and we can press S to scale this. Maybe we can scale this even more. And we can add few details here. So if you go with Ctrl R, and now if you go with Ctrl B and add, scroll your mouse, you can add one loop cut here. And now on Control, if we go with the Control numpad minus, we can subtract selection. So if I go with Control minus, now we have selected only this middle one. But if this don't work for you, you can always hold Alt and click one edge here, and Blender will select all connected parts. So I will now go with S to scale this and to something about here, and I will now go with Control B to bevel this. I don't want too much loop cuts here because I want to keep this low poly. Maybe something, maybe 2 or 3. I will press S to scale this little down, and we can do similar with this one. So Control B, Control numpad minus, S to scale, and Control B and maybe one loop cut. And maybe we can add here loop cut and press S to scale and Control B to bevel this. To get shape similar like this one. And we can also go with E to extrude and Z for the axis. And we can select all this, and we can go with Alt E and extrude along normals. Now I will just select this row here. So Alt and click here, and now Alt E, extrude along normals. And let's go with edge select and maybe Control B and scroll mouse to add 2 loop cuts here, and Control B again. Control numpad minus, S to scale. So now I will go with individual origins, because if you now with bounding box center press S, we scale this from middle part. So I will switch to individual origins, and now I will press S, and now I will go with Control B. Okay, and we can now go with right click, shade smooth, but we have this weird shading here, so we need to go to object data properties and to normals and auto smooth. Okay, and if you want, you can always go with Alt and add bevel here, but I think this is not necessary. I will now go with undo, because before bevel I want apply scale, so Control A and scale, I think we need bevel here, so Alt Control B, and if you want Alt and Control B, and you can see that now bevel works correctly. If you want to add these details here, we can make this easy, so you can just go to edit mode, face select, and we can select every other this face with holding shift. And now I will press I to insert this, and maybe S to scale this, and now maybe Alt E to extrude along normals, and now I will press S to scale this. And if you want, you can go with Ctrl numpad plus to expand selection, and now we can go with Ctrl B and add one bevel here. But I think this is maybe too much details, and this is too deep, so I will go with Ctrl Z to undo this. But we need bevel here because we get these sharp edges here, so if you want make this, you need go with Ctrl plus and Ctrl B to make bevel. So now this look a little better. And maybe we can bevel this edge here, so Alt and click here, and now Ctrl B. And let's now create this shape here. So I will go with numpad 1, and I will go with Shift A and plane. So I will move this here, and I will go with RX90 to rotate this on X-axis, and I will place this about here, and SX to scale this on X-axis, and SZ to scale this on Z-axis. And let's go with Ctrl A to apply scale, and I will add one loop cut in the middle. Now I want to keep only this shape here, so I will with edge select this part. I don't need these three edges here, and I will press delete and edges. Now we have only this part here. Now we can bevel vertices with Ctrl Shift B. So select these two vertices, and I will now press S to scale this, and maybe move to about here. And now I will go with Ctrl Shift B, and now I will scroll my mouse and move down. Next I will go to object mode, and I want to convert this edge to curve. So just right click, convert to curve, and now we get this curve option here, curve properties, and I will go to geometry, and under depth I will add some value here. So this is, I think, 3 centimeters. I think this is enough, and now you can also add a resolution here, but I don't want to add a lot of resolution here. And now I will go with right click and convert this to mesh again. So this is now not curve anymore, and we can play with this mesh. And let's now create this part, so we can go to edit mode, and with Alt select this part here, and I will now go with E to extrude and Z for Z axis, and now I will press SZ0 to scale this on Z axis all to 0, and let's scale this a little. So I will now go with E, Z, and press S to scale, and now again E, Z, and again E, Z, and S to scale, E, Z, and last time easy, and scale this, and maybe just again with easy and move this down. And now I will with Alt select this part, and I will bevel this with Ctrl B, and maybe also this part, this one here, and maybe this one. Okay, and if you want to change this in edit mode, just be sure that you are in X-ray mode, so you can select all this, and you can also move this to about here, and you can also rotate this if you want. You can select this edge here with Alt and press SZ0 to line up this. And you can also scale this. And you can expand selection with Ctrl numpad plus. Okay, and we need to move this on y-axis, so I will go with numpad 7. And let's place this to about here. And also let's connect this with on this reference. So I will go to edit mode, and I will add one loop cut here and go with Ctrl B, and one here, Ctrl B. And let's now select this face here and this one here, and now we can go with E to extrude and X for X axis. And here we can go with shade smooth and with auto smooth. And let's now add simple bulb here, so I will go with Shift A, and I will go with maybe icosphere and numpad 7, just set this to position. And press S to scale, and numpad 1 to front orthographic view, and let's place this to about here. And I will scale this on the axis maybe a little. And now I will add emission material here, so I can shade smooth this, and I can add emission white material, and I will now select this emission here and maybe straight to 10, and I will keep white color here. So if we go to render preview, we can see that this light is turned on. Maybe I can increase this to 20. And I will also select both part, and I will go with Ctrl J to join this. But now I think if we go to render preview, all this is emission material. So I will create another material. I will select this and I will create metal material, not just metal, and I will in viewport display change color to something like blue, so we can see that this is metal, this is emission material, and I will also here add this metal material. So now we can go to edit mode, and we can press L over this part. We can assign this metal material. So now this is emission, this is metal, and let's go with select both part and go with Ctrl J to join this to one object. And let's now play with this metal material. So this is just viewport display, and let's go to material view. So you can see that we have only white color here, and now I will go to shading tab. In this layout tab we are in local view, so if you press numpad/key we go out from local view, but when we switch to shading tab we also need to go to local view, so press numpad/key to bring this object here. And now we can work with metal material here. I will also use concrete texture we used before, so I will go here with Shift A, image texture, and I will search for concrete, so we can plug this here, and let's see how this looks. So we need unwrap this, so I will go to edit mode, press A to select all, and U, maybe smart UV project, or UQ projection. Okay, I think this looks a little better. With I can go with color ramp, and we can plug this to color ramp and to roughness, so we can choose how much we want shiny parts here. So if you increase blacks you get more shiny parts, if you increase whites you get more rough parts. So I don't want completely shiny and completely rough, so I will bring this to about here. And we can try also plug this to metallic, so if you move this metallic all to 1, our object is completely metal. But if you want you can also go with duplicate this color ramp, and you can choose which part you want to be metal, which part is not metal. So we can plug this to metallic. So white part will be metal and this black part will be not metal. So if you want more metal you can just increase these white parts like this. And we can also go with bump, so we can add small value bump here. Okay, and now we can also play with color, so I will go with mix RGB. I can mix this concrete texture with another color here, so if you want make this more like brownish, maybe we can try with multiply blending mode. I think this is pretty good for that what we need, so I will go to layout, and I will not use this only this emission object for lighting because it will not be visible in render. You can see that this strong orange light here, so I will back to solid view and I will go with Shift A, light and area lamp, and I will go with numpad 7 and I will bring this to about here, and I will press S to scale this down, and with numpad 1 move this to about here. And I will increase this light to maybe 800, which is maybe too much for now, but later in volumetric atmosphere it will not be too much visible. And I will add here maybe orange color. So we can now go to render preview to see how this looks. And let's now select these two objects, and I will now with numpad/key back to our scene, and I will go with RZ90 to rotate this on the axis. No, first back to bounding box center, and now RZ90. Okay, just type 2 times RZ90 or RZ180. And let's bring this to about here. And before I start duplicate this, I want to make this in collection, so we can later easily select all these lamps. So I will press M and I will call this street lamps. So now we can see that this is in this street lamp collection, and we can now select these two objects and we can go with Alt D and move this on Y-axis to about here. And now to repeat this last step, just go with Shift R and duplicate this all time. If you think that they are too close, you can always select all these objects here, and you can go with SY to scale this on Y-axis. So you can now make more space between them if you want. And let's now go with F12 to make one test render. Here is few renders with these street lamps. If you look my previous render, you can see another car here, and this car is from transportation add-on. So this is not free add-on, but if you wonder, you can look on Blender Market. I think I pay for light version about $50 and I get a lot of cars here, even boats. And I use this car here. But you can find a lot of car in this add-on, even planes. So I use this classic car here, and obviously I get a lot more details with this car, and this is advantage of paid add-ons. But I think you don't need pay for car if you are just a Blender hobbyist. You can find a lot of free and nice car, but I think this car we use here miss some details, and I think we can add this windshield wipes to our car. I think this is very nice details because it is always in front of our camera, so we can see these details very nice. And I will now try add this to this car also. There is one nice add-on for Blender which is called Blender Kit, and you can go to blenderkit.com and you can download this add-on here. So just download from this link add-on, and then you need to go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and install this add-on here, and then you can activate this Blender Kit add-on and you will get this search bar here. And from this search bar here you can search for a lot of free objects, materials, scenes, and even HDRI. So we can try search for windshield, and you can see that we get few options for windshield wipers here. And if you see this with this locker icon, that means that this is not free, so you can buy full version of this Blender Kit add-on. I think it costs about $6 per month, and you can find a lot of free and nice objects here. But I will now select this car and I will go with numpad/key to isolate only this car. And now I will bring one of these free assets here. So maybe we can use this first one. So just drag this here and move to this car, and now we have this object here, and I will select all these parts and I will go with Ctrl J to join this to one object, and now I can place this to my car. And we can also scale this, so I will press S and let's move this to about here. And I think this need to go to opposite direction, so I think I will select another one. I'm not happy with this one, so again search and let's try with this one. And let's rotate this with RZ, X or Y, and let's place this to about here. And let's go with Alt D and X and move one here. So RX or RY or RZ, I think. Okay, place this to about here, and I think this one is good. Okay, and one thing I forget, we need parent this. Okay, I need to rotate this a little more. And now I will go with Ctrl J to make this one object. And now I will go with Shift and select this car and Ctrl P, parent this and parent this to this object. And let's see how this looks in render. I render a few examples with these windshield wipers, and I think they look pretty good, so you can see here. And some details here. We are almost done with Blender, and before rendering I will try add a few things in compositing, so you can click here use nodes and just click here to activate this backdrop. And now we can go with Ctrl Shift and click here, we can activate this viewer node. And now I will press V to zoom this out, and to zoom this in you can go with Alt V. And I will try with lens distortion, so I will click here to fit and I will try this, or this maybe to 0.04, and you can add chromatic aberration effect, maybe again with 0.04, and if you go with crazy value to about 0.5 you get this chromatic aberration, very strong chromatic aberration effect, but this is too intense, so maybe just 0.04. And you can also go with glow and glare effect. By default we get this streaks effect here, but if you want you can go with fog glow, so we get very subtle fog glow effect. And if you want to see before and after, you can select this node and press M to mute this. So this is before and this is after. I think this is nice effect, but we can duplicate this and we can also add simple star maybe, no, or streaks. And we can fade this. Okay, so we get this effect here, so this is before and after. For post-processing later I will use also ambient occlusion and glossy direction path, So I will go here to layer properties tab and I will enable this glossy direction and ambient occlusion pass. And you can see that we get these two output here. And we can now go with file output node, and I will duplicate this with Shift D. And I will now go to my render folder and I will go with folder 2. And I will also create here AO for ambient occlusion and GL for glossy direction. So for this main folder I will back to layout and I will here in output properties select this folder here. So this is my main folder, and now I will go to compositing, and for glossy direction I will plug this to glossy direction and I will select this glossy direction folder, and for ambient occlusion I will plug this ambient occlusion here and I will select ambient occlusion folder. And one thing we need to do here, we need to plug this lens distortion in glossy direction and ambient occlusion. So because this distort our image for this value, we need distort also this glossy direction pass and ambient occlusion, but we don't need this chromatic aberration effect in this glossy direction and ambient occlusion. So I will back this to 0 and I will go with Shift D and I will plug one here, and I will plug this final result with lens distortion and glare effect to composite, because this is just viewer node to preview this in this compositor. Now we can go to render properties tab before we start rendering, and my recommendation is to make test render with maybe 50% of this resolution, because this will speed up your render time by 2 or 3 times, and you can go with very low samples here, maybe 30, and when you are happy you can increase this to maybe 200 and you can go with this resolution maybe to 100 or 200. All depends how your computer is fast and how much time you want to spend to rendering. And now when we are happy with these settings, we can go to, I will back this to 100 and we can go to render animation. To be sure that everything is okay, you can check your folder. So we have here 2 render images. So this is main or combined, and this is ambient occlusion, and here we have glossy direction pass. But this will take almost all night to render, and I will now start with post-processing, and for post-processing I will use my last renders with this car. Basically it's almost the same, I just use different car here, so there is no big difference. And we can start with post-processing now. So I have main render, ambient occlusion and glossy direction, and I will now copy this address and I will open After Effects, and I will now copy this address and I will open After Effects. I will go with new composition from footage and I will paste this address here, so I can select this glossy direction pass. And first I will make a folder here and I will call this renders. So I can bring this here and I can now set this to 24 frames per second, because by default in After Effects is 30 frames per second, so 24. And I will rename this to main. So I think because we change frame rate, I need a little more time here, so I will go to composition settings, and okay, I will click Control and on these numbers to switch from frames to time. So now we have time here, so composition settings, and increase this maybe to 7 seconds. And now we can move this here, and we can cut this part we don't need, so composition, trim composition to working area. And if we press space, now we can load our animation. This animation looks pretty clear because I use double resolution here, and I use maybe 500 samples. I can now import glossy direction. So first frame and image sequence, and rename this to GL, and move in this folder and set this to 24 frames per second. And now we can bring this on top and caps look to refresh this, and we can see how this glossy direction pass look. So with this pass we can basically back some glossiness to our scene, and we can add more details. So if I set this to screen, this will ignore blacks and keep only these bright colors. So this is before and after. But this is too intense, so I will press T and I will bring opacity to maybe 30%. Next we can import ambient occlusion. So first sequence and JPEG sequence. Rename this to AO. Bring in this folder and set this to 24 frames per second and bring this here, and for caps look to refresh, and you can see how this pass look. And I will set this to soft light blending mode. So we basically get a lot more details with this ambient occlusion pass. But this is also too intense, so I will press T and I will maybe use 50% of this. And let's save this, so I will go to File, Save As, or just Save. And I will call this car tutorial. And if you want to add more volumetric fill, you can duplicate this with Ctrl C and Ctrl V, and you can search for Gaussian blur. And you can increase this to maybe 300, and now we can set opacity here. So if I press T, I can set maybe to 20%, so we get more volumetric here. You can see before and after. And I can rename this to mist, so main mist, and I will maybe bring this maybe only to 10%. So this is before and after. I think this black is too strong, so I will go with a new adjustment layer, and I will call this S-curve. So I will go with volumetric color, and I will just search for this curve, make a slightly S-curve effect. So I will bring blacks little up to fade these blacks here, and we can bring also whites down, and we can make S-curve effect here. So this is before and after. Next we can add grain. So I will go new adjustment layer, and I will call this grain. And I will search here for add grain effect, and I will bring this effect here and set this to final output, and you can see before and after. So we get this grain here. And you can play with these presets, so I usually use this one. It's not big difference. Okay, this is maybe too intense, so I will bring this to 0. Maybe 7. We can also try glow effect in After Effects, so let's go with a new adjustment layer and let's call this glow, and let's search here for glow. So we have here this VR glow and just glow, and let's try with this one. And you can play with this Luma threshold. So I think this is too intense maybe, so we can bring this up. And you can also play with this radius. So if you move this value down, you will get more glow. And maybe we can keep this, but maybe only 15%. Okay, this is before and after, or 25. And now we can add halation effect. You can see example of this halation effect. So we basically get red glow around highlights. So this is another example. And we can create this quickly in After Effects. So I will go with new adjustment layer and I will call this halation. And we can go with find edges to find these highlights here. And now I will go with tint because I want color this to red. So I will select here reddish color or orange. And now I will invert this. And with levels I will isolate only these strong highlights here, so I will move this to right. And let's now go with fast box blur, and I want blur this maybe with value of 10. And now this is not so visible, so I will go with levels, and I can increase this. No, I think I will go with curves. So I can move this and increase this red glow here. And maybe I can decrease this to 7. Okay, and if we now set this to screen blending mode, we can see this red glow around highlights. And you can see before and after, so you can see these details here. Now we can add some overlays, and I will go with Lens Dirt. So I will share this link with you. You can copy this link and you can download this pack for free. And you get all this Lens Dirt overlay in 4K resolution. And you can use any of this. I think I will try with this one, so we can bring this in. I will go to project and you can double click here, and or you can just move this here, and now we can set this in our composition, and we can press S to scale this down. Okay, I will put this red halation down, and now I will scale this a little more. If we set this to screen blending mode, or maybe lighten, no. Okay, screen blending mode, and we get all this dirt overlay, and I will press T and I will maybe use just 10% of this. And I will try maybe with this one. So scale this down and screen blending mode. I think this is too big, so I think I will use another one. Maybe you can use this only on left side, so we can bring this in After Effects. S to scale this down and screen blending mode. Okay, and I will press T and set this maybe to just 20%. And I will go with this film dust texture, or you can Google this cinematic film overlay scratches, something like this, and you can find a lot of similar texture. And I think, I'm not sure where I download this, so I cannot share this with you, but I will bring this in After Effects, and I will get this on top and scale this down, and maybe move this here. And now I will set also screen blending mode or lighten. Okay, I think I will again use screen, and you can see before and after, so we get this cinematic feel with this texture, but this is too intense, so maybe 50%. But you can search a lot of similar stuff and you can play with this overlay. And last thing here, I think I will go with color correction, so we can rename this to CC, and we can go with Lumetri color, and we can play with these values. So basically I will go with vignetting to minus, so we get a darker color here. So if you go to -5, you get this effect, and I will go maybe with -1. And now I will go with basic color, basic correction, and you can basically go with change this value to maybe +50 and -50, and you can see which look you like more. So I think I will go to minus, but not 50, I will go to maybe -10. And with tint I usually go to minus because I like this green effect, I don't want purple effect if I go to plus, so maybe -10. And you can see always before and after. And you can do same with all these values here, so if you want make this more bright, you can go with plus, so if you go all to 1, you get a lot of lights here. And I think I will increase this, but not to 1, maybe 0.5. And you can play with this value, so I will go with contrast to +50 or -50. I think I want go to minus maybe 10, and highlights I think I will keep about 0, and I will go with shadows to plus maybe 20, and with whites I will go to plus maybe 10, and with blacks I think I will go with them to minus maybe just 10%. And we can go with another color correction here. So I will rename this to CC2. And if you bring this Lumetri color here, you can find here in Creative tab a lot of these Adobe LUTs. So you can try few of these and you can choose one you like. So there is a lot of predefined options here, but I will not go with 100% here. I will go maybe to just 30%, or let's try with 50 and let's try with this one down. Okay, this is all up to you, so you can play with this option here, and this is before and after. So this is before and after all these effects. So this is just from Blender and this is after post-processing. Let's see here, so before and after. This is final animation after loading, and you can see how this look. But I also make another animation with flying drone effect. So basically, camera follow car, and on one point just camera go to fly and focus on this car. And I will talk how I made this effect later. I also make another variation of this shot with flying camera effect, so you can see here this scene. So at the one point camera go from car to air, and let's try recreate this scene now. I will duplicate last Blender file and I will make new variations, so I will rename this to car tutorial drone. So we have backup of this last scene. If you need to change something or re-render, we can always back here, and let's now open this new file. Let's first select camera, and I will now go to frame about 500, and I will bring this camera to air, so I will type here, let's go to frame 500, and let's bring this camera to 50 meters, so type here 50 and now press I, and you can see that our camera from this point go to air. You can see camera here. And now I will go with numpad 0 to see how this look, and obviously we need change this rotation to 0 to look at this car. And the next thing I will change here, I don't want this focal length 5mm, I will change this to 35, because now this cover very big area and we need cover this with trees and ground. So I will back this to 35. And I will press I to insert keyframe here. But if you press this jump to keyframe button, we change here, and here is also 5, and I will bring this to maybe 20mm. And I will again go with I to insert keyframe here. So we start from 20 and go to 35. And one thing I need to fix here, because we change on this 500 frame rotation to 0, we need press I here to insert keyframe, and we need back to this keyframe, and we need change this or back this to 90 degrees and press I to insert keyframe, and now we have this effect. And we have few problems. First one is that I don't want to wait too much time to focus on car, so we need wait about 7 or 8 seconds to car appear in our camera. So we can go to about here, and we can now change this to 0. And now I will press I to insert keyframe here, and let's see how this look. Okay, but I don't want to put all focus to this car, so I will go to maybe 20, not 0, I will go to about 20, and so from these 2 points we find car, but we not put this car exactly in center, so we need more time. Okay, and the next problem is this camera shake, this bike on gravel. So this have sense when we are on ground, but when camera go to air, this don't have sense anymore. So I will go to these keyframes here when we are on ground, and I think this camera shakeify now works, so I will remove this camera wobble, and let's change this to bike on gravel, and we have same effect here. And now I will insert keyframe here to 0.7 influence, and few frames later I will bring this to 0.02. So very subtle effect, and let's see how this look now. Now we have very smooth camera shake. Okay, and obviously we need move these trees here, so just select this and move. And if you want, you can always duplicate few of these trees, so you can select all this area, for example, and with holding Control you can deselect this ground. And let's go with all DY, but you can play with this. And I select also this particle here. In first scene we don't put too much effort to this ground, we just make one plane, because this is not so visible and it is very blurred, but in this second shot I need to fix this, because in this point we see this ground. I will share this ground photoscans Blender file which I made for last tutorial, so you can open this file and you can use this to add more details to ground. So I will copy few of these examples and I will paste this in new scene. So copy objects and back here and just play with this. So I will go with paste and I will start placing this in my scene. I will separate this window so I can switch here to camera view, so we can work on right and look on left. And I will use this asphalt texture here, RZ 90, and let's place this here where it's visible in camera. And if you want to match this more with ground, you can go with G, Z and with holding shift you can bring this down. This is before and this is after. And that's basically all for this scene. So that's basically all for this scene. You can see that we can, with small adjustments, make another interesting animation. And to render this, just make another folder. And of course make this AO and glossy direction and just change this to folder 3. And here in Compositor don't forget change this folder also to 3 glossy direction and 3 ambient occlusion. And if you wonder how I made this animation, I basically do same, so I duplicate this file and I put camera here close to ground, and I change this preset, camera Shakify preset, to investigation, so we have very subtle camera move effect. And then here in foreground where is visible in camera, I put a lot of details. So this grass is from Botanic add-on. But you can use any another source to find grass, so maybe you can use this Blender kit, or you can search on Sketchfab or CG Trader, or you can find a lot of these similar assets online. And then I re-render this and I make few cuts in Premiere Pro, but I think I will talk about this later. So you can see these cuts here. And you can see these details here, so this is grass, and I also use these mushrooms here, maybe it's not so visible, and also here, and a lot of another details. And to make this road more visible, I put these blocks here, so this is basically just a cube. Let's open Blender again. No, I think this is a photo scan from Quixel Bridge, but it will not be big difference if you just go with cube, so Shift A and cube, and scale this on y-axis, so SY, and if you just apply, let's apply scale, and you can add concrete texture, and we can go to shading tab. And we can use concrete texture from before. Okay, I don't have concrete texture in this Blender file, so I will bring this from Pixabay, and we can just plug this here. And in Material Preview, new Cube Projection, and we can go with Ctrl T, and we can scale this maybe to 2. And we can use same for roughness and bump. And bring this down, so just add some bevel here, so you can go with, you can select these 2 edges, and you can go with, or these 4 edges, and Ctrl B to add some bevel here. Let's back to scene and Alt D and just duplicate this few times. For this scene here I use same Blender file, and I put this main inside. So for this I use Mixamo, and I talk about Mixamo in my few tutorials, but I found this man on blendsweb.com, so I searched for human base mesh, so blendsweb.com, and then I import this to Pixamo, so you can upload character here, but if you don't want to use another character, you can find a lot of free here. So you can use, for example, this one, and then you need search for animation. And I search for driving, and I think I found this one, and you can select this animation, and you get animated character, and then you need just download this. So I use this FBX74, and you need download this, and then you need go to Blender, File, Import FBX, and then you need select this FBX file, and you can place this man inside car, but just be sure to select this bone and car and go with Ctrl P and set parent to object, so this man will follow this car. And then I just create new camera and put inside car, and also parent camera and car, and I make this shot so you can see how this look. And I made a few cuts here, so this is not so visible, only few frames. And for my short animation I made a lot of these shots, and about 20 or 30, and I will now talk about sound effects and cuts in Premiere Pro, but you can use any video editor. And these shots here is from my last tutorial. And let's now open Premiere Pro. Premiere Pro is a very simple program, so that's the reason I use this. Even if you don't use this, you can make this very quickly with just watching a few tutorials. And I will start a new file, and I will now import a few of these videos here. I will bring this in here, and we can now also bring this to timeline here. And we can start cutting this, and you can see this animation. And I think this is too long, so I make a few cuts. I use this part here, and then I just make with this razor tool, I just make 2 cuts here. And I deleted these 2 parts, and right click and ripple delete, so we get this much faster and dynamic animation. And also I will cut this part. And you can also get a nice effect if you just put a black color between, so few 1 or 2 frames empty. And let's move this here, so let's see how this looks. And now we have this flying camera animation, and for this I will put this main inside car here. So this down is audio track, but we don't have audio here, so I will you can delete this. So just right click on link and you can delete. You can separate this from video file and you can delete this if you want. But this animation is too big, so I will also just make maybe 2 cuts here. And I will now delete this part. And let's see how this looks. I don't like this part here because it's too long and it's not so quality, so I decided to use this ambient occlusion path from this render. So I will copy this address and I will with double click here import this just ambient occlusion animation. So just select this image sequence and you can import this here, and I will place this to about here, and let's see how this looks. And I will just use this last part. So let's make cut here because here is we have a black area here, and let's cut this part and maybe this one. And let's move this here, and now we have this effect. Let's take a little more of this to about here and move this to end. And we have this effect, but I don't like this transition here, so I will go to effect control and I will here put keyframe to 100, so now this is completely visible, and I will set here opacity all to 0, and I will move here, and now we have this slight transition. So now this animation on top go from 0 opacity to 100 and we get this fade effect. But I want to make this more faster, so I will bring this on left, and let's see now. And now you can add your title if you want. So we can type here car tutorial. And then you can choose nice font. I used this Roboto last time, and we can also place this here. And you can under effects find a lot of this transition. So I will go to video transition and dissolve. And you can use this film dissolve. So we get this effect. But you can play with all these effects here. Or you can use even this slide effects here. Let's talk about sound effects. So first source you can find for free is this YouTube Studio. If you have YouTube account, you can go to audio and you can hear under sound effects, search for example for car. And if you find something you like, you can download this for free. Another nice source for free audio sounds is this site freesound.org, and you just need to make a free profile and then you can download a lot of free sounds. So let's search for car drive and we get 1900 sounds, which is crazy, and then you can listen this, and if you like this you can go here and you can download this. And the next nice source is this small software called Soundly, so you can download this for free. But if you want to unlock all these sounds, you can see we have a few of these for free. But most of them are paid, and for this animation here, this sound effect here I found on Soundly. I searched for Rocket, so I searched for Rocket and I listened few of this. And I found this nice effect, and I just drag this here and move to Premiere Pro, and I put this here, and now we have sound effect for this animation here. Okay, I will cut this first part and I will just move this here. And now when this camera go up, I want to cut this, and I also want to fade this effect, so I will put keyframe here, and I will now go to all to minus here, and now we fade this sound effect. But now you can add another effect. You can search for example for drone. Let's try for drone fly. Now let's try with drone. Must be somewhere drone effect here. Okay, this last one is maybe nice, so we can also bring this here, and we can now fade this. So I will go to, I think this is too intense, so I will go with -15, but I will start from 0, so I will move this all to -287, and let's now see how this looks. Okay, maybe this is still intense, so I will maybe go with here to -20 or -25. I talk a lot about video editing in my last tutorial, so you can look for them. And this is all for this tutorial. I hope you learned something new, and see you in next one. If you are completely new to Blender, I'm going to share with you a 10-minute video I made for a past tutorial where you can learn the basic of Blender. If you have experience with Blender, you can skip this part. You can download Blender for free at blender.org. First, I will introduce you to Blender a bit, after that we will start with this scene. This part is intended for Blender beginners. If you have experience, you can skip this part. Since Blender is a large and complex program, I will try to show you only the basic in about 10 minutes before we start working on the scene. When you open Blender for the first time, we see a lot of options. The good news is that you don't need to know most of them to create a scene. We will spend most of our time on the Layout tab, and we will also use shading for creating materials, UV editor for projecting materials on 3D objects, and finally a bit of compositing tab. All these tabs above are actually made up of these tools here. For example, Layout consists of 3D viewport and timeline because we will use them a lot, so they are here by default when we open Blender. We can create a workspace according to our wishes or needs. For example, if we separate this window, we can add UV editor or shader editor or another 3D viewport here. In the 3D viewport we have three objects by default: camera, object and point lamp as light source. To create a render we must have at least one camera in the scene. To switch to camera view we can go to View, Cameras, Active Camera. But all these options have shortcut keys. Searching for this option for this menu is waste of time, so if you use Blender you have to learn some shortcuts. We will cover the most common shortcuts in this tutorial, and with time later you can learn shortcuts for advanced options as well. For example, to switch to camera view the shortcut is numpad 0. When we have a selected camera, in the Properties tab we can find options for this camera. For example, focal length, which is actually zoom, depth of field and others. Each object in the scene can be deleted by delete key or X, and a new one can be created with Shift A or by going to Add menu. We will mostly use the options under Mesh. There we have basic geometry shapes from which we can model anything we want in the edit mode. Once we have the camera and object, we can make the first render. Shortcut for render is F12, or you can go to render image. We now see our object because we have a light source, which is this point lamp. If we remove the point lamp and press F12, we still see something, and the reason is because in the World Properties tab we have a dark gray color but not completely black, which means that our world or environment emits some light. If we switch to black we won't see anything. Lighting in Blender can be from three different types of source. The first is world or environment. There, in addition to color, we can also use an external file called HDRI. We can find many of them on internet for free, and we can also use procedural sky texture which comes with Blender. We create the second group of light with Shift A. There we have point, sun, spot and area. Each of these sources emit light differently. We can also turn any object into a light source if we create an emission material for this object in Shading tab. In Blender we have two render engines. The first is Eevee and the second is Cycles. Eevee is less realistic but is much faster than Cycles. Eevee can be very realistic, similar to Cycles, but you need to know how to set some settings manually, while Cycles is realistic by default because it's a physical based path tracer render engine. Speed depends on the computer power and scene optimization. In the Properties tab we have a different options. One that we will use often is the Modifier tab. There we have a large number of modifiers that speed up the modeling process. For example, the Array modifier enables us to quick and easily duplicate objects. With the Mirror modifier we can easily mirror everything we do on one side to another side. With the Boolean modifier we can cut one object with another. There are many other modifiers. These are just a few that we use most often. The tools on the left allows us to quickly transform the object. For example, we will often use the Move, Rotate and Scale tool, but we usually use them with shortcuts G for Grab, R for Rotate and S for Scale. Most often combine it with X, Y or Z for X, Y or Z axis. For example, if we press S for Scale then X for X axis, we can scale the object only along the X axis, or RY to rotate only on the Y axis, or GZ to move along the Z axis only. To edit an object we need to go to Edit mode. The shortcut for this is Tab. There we have three types of selection: vertex, edge and face selection. We can jump between them with 1, 2 or 3 on keyboard. Now we can grab vertex, edge and face and scale, rotate or grab with S, R or G. There are a large number of options that we use in edit mode. Some that we use often is Ctrl R to add loop cut, E to extrude and Ctrl B to bevel. Shortcuts that we use often to navigate through the scene is Numpad 1 for the front orthographic view, Numpad 3 for the right, Numpad 9 for the left, and Numpad 7 for the top. You can get the same by clicking on this gizmo. By pressing the N key we open additional tabs. You can find all this in Properties tab and much more, but this is shortcut for this we use often. The first three tabs come with Blender and the rest is the add-ons that I personally install. We will mostly use the Transform tab where we can see location, rotation, scale and dimension. There we can see the dimensions of our selected object. In this tutorial we will use this car because it is simple and we don't have much to do with it and it fits the ambience. But you can use any car from CG Trader, Sketchfab and similar sites or add-ons. When you're downloading objects from other authors, you may get several problems. That's why I recorded a past tutorial in which we solve in 3 examples all problems you may have when downloading 3D models online. If you are interested you can look for that tutorial, and in this we will use this simple car. Let's start with Blender. First thing I will do here, I will delete these 3 default objects because we don't need this here, and I will go with File, Save As, and I will call this car tutorial. And let's start with ground. So if you look this animation, you can see this ground here. But because this is not so visible, we don't need high resolution texture here, and we don't need a lot of details. So I will back to Blender and I will start with plane. And now I will press N and I will type here 60 meters. And because we change now this scale, so I will go with Ctrl A and I will apply scale to back this to 1. We can find nice and free textures on ambientcg.com, so I will go here to materials and I will search for gravel and you can download any of this, but I will go with this first one, and I will go with 1K resolution because we don't need high resolution for this ground which is barely visible. So you can download this without registration, and we can bring this to our computer, and I will go with extract files, and this is what you get. Now I will copy this address and I will back to Blender, and I will, with selected object, I will go to material and I will call this gravel, and now we can go to shading tab, and now we need enable node Wrangler add-on. So edit preferences, add-ons, and just search for node and enable this node Wrangler add-on, and now we can select this principal BSDF, and we can go with Ctrl Shift and T, and now we can navigate to this folder, and I will select color and roughness. I don't want all this texture because this is not visible, and I will just click here to principal texture setup. And we have one problem here. If you look to this to MBNCG, you can see that this is 2x2, about 2x2 meters, and scale of this is this plane is 60 by 60 meters, so we need scale this to 30 times. And now this is real world scale. If you want, you can add some bump details, so I will go with bump, and we can go with color ramp, and we can plug this to vector, and this to height, and this to normal. And you can see that we get some bumps here, but this is maybe too intense, so let's just bring this down. And if we go to material preview, we can see our gravel texture here. Now we need more space for our car, and I will go with Shift D, and if you hold Y for Y axis, we can move this on Y axis, and now we can repeat this process with Shift R. So if you go with Shift R, we can repeat this, and I will repeat this maybe 6 or 7 times. Or you can do this manually. You can just go with Shift D, Y for Y axis, and you can move this. And now you can select both of this, and you can go with Shift D, Y, Shift D, Y. Okay, and now last time, so we have 7 of these planes here, and I think this will be enough. Next thing we need here is car. So you can go to CG Trader or Sketchfab, and you can search here for car. And if you select this free checkbox, you will search only free cars. But I will select this car here, and if you cannot find this, you can copy this link I will share with you, and you can find this car. And to download this car, you just need make free profile, so you can just sign up with your Google account. And now you need click here to free download, and you need wait 20 seconds here, and then you can download this first link. So I think this is Blender file. So this is 3ds Max, and this is FBX. So this first one is Blender file, and this is how this look. And now you can open this Blender file. So this is almost ready to use object, but if you are Blender beginner, maybe you will be confused why you don't see this layout tab here. And you can just go here to plus, and you can go to general and layout, And I will go to material preview to see how this look in with materials, and I see few problems here. So if we select this car, we can see that this is this red material, but if you are not sure, you can always go to edit mode and you can select one of these faces, and you can see that this is this material. And if you select this glass, you can see that this is this terrace material, and I will call this glass. But I see that this material don't look good, so I will go here to shading tab. I don't see shading tab here, so I can again go with here general and shading. And if we select this red material, we don't need this diffuse, and I see that there is no reflection. Creator of this car brings specular all down to 0, and that's the reason why we don't see reflection here. So I will back this to 0.5, and now we can play with this roughness. But I don't want completely shiny car, I want to make some variation in roughness, so we can make this quickly with concrete texture, and usually I go to textures.com, and you can search here for concrete, but for now I will use this texture from pixabay.com. So you can also download this. You can just click here and you can download any of this resolution, but I usually avoid this very high resolution because this can slow down your render time. But because this is only black and white image, and this file is very small, so I will now go with almost 4K resolution. So you can download this image here, or you can use any of this from textures.com. So these shaders are paid, this is not free, but if you go down you can find a lot of this texture here, so you can also download this for free, because you get every day 15 credits for free. But let's for now use this for pixabay.com. I will bring this to my computer to Pixabay folder, and because maybe I will use this next time. And now I will also bring this to Blender. You can also go with Shift A and image texture, and then you can select your image, or you can just drag this here. And I will now, with enable node wrangler, we can go with Ctrl Shift and we can click on this texture, and we can see how this is projected to our car. And this is obviously not good, so we can go to edit mode and we can press A to select all, and we can go with Q projection. And now you can see that this is much better projected to our car, but I think these details are too big, so we can go with Control, select this texture here and go with Control T to get this texture coordinate and mapping node, and I will scale this maybe to 2 or 3. And let's now go with color ramp, and we can use this for roughness. So I will go with Ctrl Shift and click on this principal BSDF to back this material, and I will now plug this to roughness. So in Blender, black color mean completely no rough, so that's mean completely shiny, and white color mean completely rough. So if we add more white color here, we get more this rough part, but I don't want too much this rough part here, so I will bring this maybe to about here. And we get a lot of details with just one texture. And And if you want, you can use this also for bump, so I will go with bump, and I will plug this to height and this to normal, and I will bring this all down to maybe 0.002. or 0.004. And we can also use this color ramp for base color. So if we go to mix node, we can plug this to factor, and now if we plug this to base color, we can choose, we can make variation in these two colors. So I will go maybe with brown color, and I will now copy this hex code, and I will, with this second color, I will just make a small variation of this color. So I will go more to black, and you can see that this part here is now darker than this one, but if you want, you can go with another color ramp here, and now we can tweak these settings here, and you can choose where you want these black colors. Okay, and let's now fix this glass material. So select this glass here, and you can see that there is no glass at all. So I will go with Shift A and glass BSDF and Shift A and transparent. So now with Control Shift and right click, we can connect these two textures, and we can get this mix shader, or you can go with mix shader, and you can just plug this here and this to surface, and now we get transparent glass. So we get glass shader and transparent with this is slider. So if you want more glass or more transparent, you can bring this all to 1, but I will go with 0.5. And we can also use same concrete texture, so I will go with Shift A, image texture, and I will select this concrete texture, and I will go with Shift A and color ramp, and we can control this texture with color ramp. So if we plug this to roughness, we get variation in roughness, and I want more shiny parts here, so I will add more black color here. And we can now back to layout, and if you look this animation, you can see that we will see only this front part of car, and because we will use a lot of motion blur here, this is not so visible, and all this animation is too fast, so we don't need very high model here. But if you want, if you go to solid view and to edit mode, you can see that this is very low poly. If you want, you can go with subdivision surface modifier, and you can set this to 1. If you click here, you can see before and after, and you can see that we get a lot of details here and very smooth mesh now. But just to know that this will slow down your render time, and I will in viewport use this, set this to 0, so we will use this only in render. But if you see that your render time is very slow, you can also remove this subdivision modifier. It's all up to you. You can decide if you want to use this subdivision or not. Wheels are not visible in render, so I think I will delete this for now, because we don't need this in our render. And now we can go with right click and copy, and we can now paste this to our scene. and we have our car here. So because we are in material preview, this can take few seconds to load this material, and I will select this car and I will go with RZ 180 to rotate this in this direction. And let's now add camera to our scene. So I will go with Shift A and camera. And now our camera is here, so I will move this to about here. And I will rotate this on X-axis by 90 degrees. And on Z-axis to 0. And if you press numpad 0, we switch to camera view. And now I will change resolution of this camera, so I will go here to render properties tab, and now I will go first to output properties tab, and I will set this to 1024 by 430, and we get this more cinematic aspect ratio. And I will now back to this render properties, and I will set this to cycles because we will use cycles render engine, and I will set this to GPU. And if you want, you can set this noise threshold to 0.2. We will get maybe little noise, but we will also speed up our render time for 10 or 20% with this value. And let's bring this viewport samples to maybe 100, and also to in render to 100. And now if we press F12, we get first render here. And we can also go here in viewport to render preview. You can see that we see this car because we have in world properties we have this dark color, but not completely dark, so we can still see our car. And I will bring this almost to black. And one thing I forget here, so to speed up your render time, we will use this denoise. But if you have this optics, just use this optics denoiser because it is much faster than this open image denoiser. For lighting, we will use volumetric with combination of point lamp, and this is effect we get. You can see a lot of volumetrics here, but you can see this in this my previous tutorial and render what effect I want to get. So we get a lot of volumetrics and bluish color in our scene. Okay, so we can now go to solid preview, and I will go with Shift A and cube, and I will scale, press S to scale this cube. So I will on Z axis go to about 70 meters, and now I want to cover all scene with this cube because this will be our volumetric cube. So I will go with SY to cover this on Y axis, and SX to cover this on X axis. Okay, and now I will go with Ctrl A and apply scale. And we now cannot see what is inside this cube. So I will go here to Object Properties tab, and I will go in Viewport Display. I will set this to bounce. Now we can see inside this cube. And I will now go to Material Preview, and I will call this Volumetric. And now I will go to Shading tab, and I will delete this Principal BSDF, and I will go with Principal Volume. And now I will set this density to 0.05, and also I will go with white color here, and I will plug this to volume. And if you go to render preview, we can see our volumetric cube here, but now we need light to go through this cube and make our scene visible. So I will back to solid mode here, And now I will go with Shift A and I will go with light point lamp. Numpad 3 to side view, and I will bring this point lamp to about this value, maybe on half of this cube. And now we need very strong light to go through this volumetric, so I will go with value of about 80,000. So if we now go to render preview, we can see how this look. But I want bluish color here, so I will select this color and we can see how this look. And now I want just cover all this cube with lights. So I will go with Alt D to make instance of this point lamp, and I will hold Alt Y to move this on Y axis. And now we can go with Shift R to repeat this process. But I don't want to make this perfectly aligned, so I will just make maybe more lights here and maybe less here. And we can bring some of this maybe a little up. Let's now animate car. So I will back to solid preview. And I will select this car and I will go to frame 1. I will put mouse here over this location and I will press I to insert keyframe here. Now I will increase this timeline to maybe 500. So because we use 24 frames per second here, that means that our animation will be about, so 500 by 24, it's about 20 seconds. I will now go to last frame to about 500, or you can type here 500, and I will move this car to about here, and now I will press I over this location, and if we press space we can see that our car is animated. And if you put your mouse over this timeline, you can press T and you can choose this linear interpolation, and if you press space, now you can see that our car have constant speed. But we can see that our car go, but camera is still here, so we need parent this camera to our car. So I will go with numpad 7 and I will place this camera to about here. First I will go to camera properties tab and I will set this to maybe 35. So this is basically zoom. And I will start with 35. And let's see in render preview how this look, and I will move this on Y axis. And one thing I need fix here, so you can see this clipping. So just bring this to 0.01 or okay, I think this is good. So we can now, if we move this with left click, we can move this Y axis until we go inside car. Okay, to about here, and I will also move this maybe on X axis. And our camera is now inside car, so I will now select camera, first camera, and with holding control, with holding shift, we can select our car. So important thing here is that our car is last selected, which means this yellowish color here. So now we can go with Control P and we can set parent to object. And if you press space now, this camera will follow car. So let's now animate camera. And for this we will use camera Shakeify add-on, which is very simple and but a very powerful add-on. You can go to this link here, so you can copy this link and you can go here to code and you can download this zip. And after I will set this to desktop. I already have this here. So now you can go back to Blender and you can go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and you can click here to install. And you can find this add-on on your computer. Just select this and install add-on. And then search for camera and just activate this camera Shakify add-on. And when you select your camera, you can here find your add-on. So you will find this camera Shakify tab. I'm not sure why I get this Python errors here, because I use old version of Blender. I will for now use old version of this add-on, which is called Camera Wobble. But I think you should not get this error with this camera Shakify, and because this is same add-ons, just this is old version and this one is new, you can just click here to plus and you can use any of these presets. So last time for this animation I will use this bike on gravel, and I will just use old version here and I will select here bike on gravel. And you can play with this influence. So let's go first with numpad 0 and let's press play. So you can see how this animation look. You can play with this influence. You can set maybe this to 3 to get more effect here, but I think this is too much, so maybe I will go with maybe 0.7 here. So with this camera shake, if I just click plus here and set this here to 0.7 if you want. And we get this effect. So we now have animated car and animated camera, and let's now press F12 to see how this look. So let's now make test render. I will go to about frame 20 and I will press F12. And I think we need to move this little on y-axis because we have this, we see this inside part of car and we don't have anything here. So we basically see this hard edge. So I will select camera and I will go to frame 0 and let's move this camera a little on y-axis. If you want, you can go to numpad 0 and you can switch to render preview. And I will now press I over this location. Okay. To make this scene look more fast and more dramatic, I will create this vertigo or dolly zoom effect. And you can see in this example how this look. To create this effect, we need to play with this focal length. So I want first start with 35 focal length and then I will go with about 5. So you can see how this look. So this is 35 and this is 5. And I will show you how we can create this effect. I will in quick example show you how you can create this dolly zoom effect. And you don't need to follow this, this is just for test. So I will go here with Shift A and I will create this monkey object, and now I will go with press N and I will go with numpad 0 and I will set camera to 90 degrees and bring this down. And now I need maybe 100 frames here. And I will set this focal length to 50 and I will press I to insert keyframe here And now I will go to keyframe 100 and I will set this maybe 5, and I will press I to insert keyframe here, and if we press now space, we can see what effect we get. But if we at the same time animate this location, so I will on first frame insert keyframe here, and now I will go to frame 100, and now I will bring this camera closer to this object. And if we now insert keyframe here, we can see in top orthographic view what we get. So we basically at the same time zoom out from this object, and at the same time we go closer with camera to this object. Camera perspective, we can see what effect we get. To make this faster, we can bring this to about here, and let's now press space. And this is basically this dolly zoom effect. Okay, so let's make this effect in this example. So I will back this 35mm, and I will press I to insert keyframe here, and I will now go to frame about maybe 200. And I will now set this maybe to 5mm, and I will press I here, and let's now go. So I will split this window, and I will go here with numpad 0 to switch to camera view to see how this look. And I will switch also to this render preview. So you can with the middle mouse button move this, and you can switch here to render preview. And I will now move this on y-axis here. So I want to avoid this part inside car because we don't have anything here. So I will move this to all to here. And now I will press I to insert keyframe here. And you can now see what effect we get. We can make before and after render, so I will go to frame 0 and I will press F11 to open this image editor, and I will go to slot 1 and press F12. And now I will go to slot 2 and I will go to frame 200, and let's now press F12. Hello and welcome to the new tutorial. In this tutorial we will create scenes from the introduction in the free program Blender step by step. The entire process of creating scenes is recorded, so the tutorial is easy to follow even for beginners. The tutorial is separated into 15 Hello and welcome to the new tutorial. In this tutorial we will create scenes from the introduction in the free program Blender step by step. The entire process of creating scenes is recorded, so the tutorial is easy to follow even for beginners. The tutorial is separated into 15 parts with an average duration of 10 minutes to make it easier to follow. If you are a Blender beginner, in the first 10 minutes I will introduce you to the basic of the Blender. After that we will download the car and improve the materials and animate it. We will talk about camera settings and camera animation. We will create lighting using volumetric and increase the illusion of the speed with the help of emission particles and dolly zoom effect. We will also talk about modeling, post-processing, video editing, sound effects and more. All resources and links are included in the tutorial. Let's now add lights to car. So I will go to frame 0 and I will select this car and I will go with numpad/key to isolate only this car. So we can work only with car and lights. And I will now set cursor here and I will go with Shift A. And I will go with light and I will go with spotlight. And now I will go with RX90 to rotate this on 90 degrees. Now I will go to light properties tab and I will set this maybe to orange light and I will set this maybe to 500. And we can also play with spot size and this radius here, but I will just move this little on y-axis and I will go with Alt D and I will make double lights here, so we can go with Alt D and X to move this on x-axis, and we can now go with Alt D again, X, and place one here and Alt D X and one here. Now we can parent this to our car, so we can, because if we move this to timeline we can see that this is not parent, and you can select one lamp and hold shift and select all 4 lamps, or you can select first one and go to select linked object data, because we use Alt D, and now we can hold shift and select our car and we can go with Control P and set parent to object. And now we can see that these lights go with car. And now we can go with numpad/key to back to our scene. And I make test renders with lights so you can see how this look. Next thing we need here is trees. So in this example here you can see a lot of trees. And for this I use this botanic add-on. So polygonic and botanic add-on, but because this is not free add-on, I think one of these assets here, first one, is free, so you can go to Blender Market and you can search for botanic and you can click here on this polygonic botanic and you can, I think, download this for free, and you will get few trees for free, and you can use this one is in this scene. So you can just click here and OK, and then you can just place this over scene. So just S to scale, bring this down, and with Alt D we can make instance of this object. So Alt D Y to move this on y-axis and Alt D X to move this here, But last time, because I have this paid add-on, I use two versions of these trees. I think I use also this one. And I will press S to scale and just play with this. So you can rotate this on the axis, so RZ and Alt D, Y, and just be sure to not use Shift D, just use Alt D. But if you don't want to use this botanic add-on, you can of course go to CG Trader and you can search here for trees. And you can click here to free, and you can find a lot of high quality and free models. So you can download any of these models and you can place it in your scene. But in last tutorial I suggest also this one, this website, so 3dshaker.com. So you can go to library and free, and then you can download this nice tree here. So you can click here and you can also buy this and download this free tree. And I will search this on my computer, so we can open this. I will find this file, so this is what you get. I will go to layout here, and if you select this tree and if you go to edit mode, you can see a lot of mesh here. And because we will duplicate this tree a lot of time, we don't want high resolution mesh here, because this will slow down your render time drastically. And we can go to edit mode and we can go to mesh, cleanup, decimate geometry, and I will decimate this 10 times. So I will go with here with 0.1. And you can see from afar we still get high quality tree, but this will now make our scene much faster. And now I will go with copy object, and I will now back to my Blender file, and we can also use this tree. So I will press paste here, and you can see that this tree is very small, so I will press S and I will scale this. And we can also use this tree here. So you can go with Alt D and move this on Y axis. And we can scale this, rotate and place over scene. After about 10 minutes of playing with these trees and duplicate, so you can also duplicate, select more trees, and you can go with Alt D and you can move this, for example, on Y axis. So you don't need duplicate this one by one. And I create this scene, and I put less trees here at the end, so I get this effect. Let's now create this street lamp. So believe or not, this is a street lamp here. And if I move to this frame, you can see that there is street lamp. And because this is barely visible, we don't need to put too much effort to create this. But we can start now with cylinder. So I will go with Shift A, cylinder, and I will bring this to 16 vertices here. And I will now press numpad /key so we can work only with this street lamp. And I will now go to this transform tab, and I will type here 4 meters on the axis. Now first I will scale this maybe to 0.3 on X and Y, and now I will type here 4 meters on the axis. And we can now make basic shapes, so I will go with numpad 1 and to X-ray mode, so we can go to edit mode, and with this edge select, we can select this part here and press S. So this is my reference I download on internet, so I want to create something similar like this. So we can go with Ctrl R to add one loop cut here, and we can press S to scale this. Maybe we can scale this even more. And we can add few details here. So if you go with Ctrl R, and now if you go with Ctrl B and add, scroll your mouse, you can add